I shot an adult scene when I was 18 my husband doesn't know, and I just found the video on the internet throwaway account because this is a secret I've kept for a decade. Here goes. When I was 18, I made a huge mistake fresh out of high school. I was broke, naive, and desperately searching for a way to support myself. I had moved out of my parents' house and was living with a friend trying to make ends meet by working 2 minimum wage jobs. It was exhausting, and I was barely scraping by. My parents were incredibly strict and conservative. They had very clear expectations for how I was supposed to live my life: go to college, get a respectable job, marry a respectable man, and so on. But I was always a bit of a rebel, pushing against their rigid expectations. The final straw came when I got a tattoo on my hip a few weeks before graduation. When they found out, they were furious. We had a massive argument, and they told me that if I couldn't abide by their rules, I wasn't welcome in their house. So I left. I moved in with a friend who was kind enough to take me in, but I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I needed to support myself, and fast. I juggled 2 minimum wage jobs, one at a diner and another at a real store. It was exhausting, and the money I made barely covered my basic expenses. Every day felt like a struggle, and I constantly worried about how I was going to make it. One night, I was scrolling through Craigslist, yeah, I know, and came across an ad promising quick, easy money for a modeling gig. The description was vague, but the pay was more than I made in a week at my regular jobs. I was desperate, so I responded. The guy who replied was charming and professional. He explained that it was an adult film shoot, but assured me it was a one-time thing, totally discreet, and that my face wouldn't even be shown. I hesitated. But the money was too tempting. I convinced myself it was just one of those things people did when they were young and broke, and no one would ever find out. The shoot itself was awkward and uncomfortable. The director was a sleazy middle-aged guy who kept making creepy comments, and the other performer was just as uncomfortable as I was. I remember feeling this overwhelming sense of shame and regret. As soon as the camera started rolling, I felt dirty and degraded, but I pushed those feelings aside, took the money, and tried to move on with my life. I never told anyone about it and buried the memory deep, hoping it would never resurface. Fast forward to now. I'm 28, happily married to a wonderful man, and we have a beautiful 2-year-old daughter. Life has been good. My husband is supportive, kind, and everything I could have hoped for in a partner. We've built a solid life together, and I've never felt the need to revisit my past mistakes until last night. I was lying in bed browsing through Reddit when I stumbled upon a post in one of those shocking moments. Subreddit. Someone had shared a link to a compilation video on a sketchy adult site. My heart dropped when I saw the thumbnail. It was me from 10 years ago. My face wasn't shown, but I recognized the room, the clothes, and the tattoo on my hip that I got when I was 19. I clicked the link, and there it was, the entire scene. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. How could this be happening? I thought that video was long buried and forgotten. Panic set in as I realized anyone could stumble upon it, including my husband. I don't know what to do. I love my husband more than anything, and I don't want this to destroy our marriage. He knows about my rough past, but I've never told him about the video. I'm terrified he'll see it and be disgusted with me, or worse, that someone else will see it and tell him. I've been up all night going through every possible scenario in my head. Do I tell him before he finds out? Do I pray it never comes to light? I don't want to lose him, but I can't live with this anxiety. The next day I tried to go about my usual routine, but everything felt different. I was hyper aware of every interaction with my husband, scrutinizing his expressions for any hint that he might know. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, I jumped, terrified it might be someone who had seen the video. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and felt like I was on the verge of a breakdown. I started obsessively checking the site where I had found the video, hoping it might have been taken down, but it was still there. I researched ways to get it removed, but everything seemed complicated and time-consuming. I felt trapped, unable to see a way out of this nightmare. The evening after our daughter was asleep, I finally mustered up the courage to talk to him. We were sitting on the couch, watching a movie, and I could barely focus on the screen. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweaty. I knew I couldn't keep this from him any longer. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. I told him about how broke and desperate I was when I was 18, how I found the ad on Craigslist, and how I ended up doing the shoot. I explained how ashamed I felt and how I had buried the memory, hoping it would never resurface. Then I told him about finding the video last night and how terrified I was that he would see it. When I finished, there was a long, heavy silence. My husband looked stunned, his face a mixture of shock and confusion. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and it broke my heart. He finally asked why I hadn't told him about this before. I told him I was ashamed and thought it was something I could just forget and move on from. I never wanted it to come between us. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. I could see him processing everything, and I was terrified of what he might decide. Finally, he said he needed some time to think about it. He said he loved me, but that this was a lot to take, and I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. At least he didn't walk out right then and there. I told him I understood and that I would give him all the space he needed. The next few days were incredibly difficult. We barely spoke, and the tension in the house was palpable. I tried to go about my daily routine, but everything felt different. I couldn't stop thinking about the video and the possibility of losing my husband. I began to think about how my parents had always warned me that my reckless behavior would come back to haunt me in their own twisted way. They were right. The irony was bitter. I considered reaching out to them, seeking some form of reconciliation or advice, but I quickly dismissed the idea. They had cut me off without a second thought, and I doubted they would be any more understanding now. Meanwhile, my husband and I communicated through texts and occasional phone calls, discussing logistics and updates about our daughter. It was clear he was still struggling with his feelings, and I tried to give him the space he needed. One night, as I was putting our daughter to bed, she looked up at me with her big innocent eyes and asked, "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy hear?" The question my heart. I realized that no matter what happened between my husband and me, I needed to be strong for her. She was the most important thing in my life, and I couldn't let my past mistake ruin her future. Determined to fix things, I spent hours researching ways to get the video removed. I contacted lawyers, filed takedown requests, and did everything in my power to erase that part of my past. It was a painstaking process, but slowly the video began disappearing from various sites. Then one evening, my husband came home from work and asked if we could talk. My heart was in my throat as I sat down with him at the kitchen table. He told me he'd been doing a lot of thinking. He said the whole situation was a lot to process, that he felt hurt and betrayed. He couldn't understand why I had kept something so significant from him, why I had allowed this dark secret to fester. I tried to explain my fear, my shame, and how I thought burying it was the best way to move forward. But I could see the conflict in his eyes, the battle between love and betrayal, understanding and anger. He told me he wasn't sure if he could get past it, that he needed time to sort through his feelings. We decided to take a temporary separation to give us both space to think. He moved in with his brother, and I stayed at home with our daughter. It was one of the hardest periods of my life. Each day felt like an eternity, filled with self-doubt and regret. I missed him terribly, and the house felt emptier than ever. After a month of separation, we decided to meet up and talk. We went to a park, a neutral ground where we could discuss everything openly. Sitting on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree, we laid everything out, our fears, our hopes, and our uncertainty. My husband admitted that he was still hurt and angry, but he also realized that he didn't want to lose our family over a mistake I made when I was desperate and naive. He recognized the effort I was putting into rectifying the situation and appreciated my honesty, even if it came belatedly. We agreed to go to 𝐓𝐡𝐢 therapy to rebuild our trust and communication. Since agreeing to 𝐓𝐡𝐢 therapy, my husband and I have been on a roller coaster of emotions. The sessions are grueling, forcing us to confront painful truths and navigate through layers of hurt and betrayal. But amidst the turmoil, there are moments of connection and understanding that give me hope. Despite the progress we've made in therapy, there are still lingering doubts and uncertainties. My husband struggles with trust, and I can't blame him. It's hard to erase a decade of secrecy and betrayal overnight, but we're both committed to the process, determined to rebuild what was broken. As we delve deeper into therapy, we're uncovering layers of our relationship that we never knew existed. There are moments of raw vulnerability and painful honesty, but there's also a sense of liberation in confronting our demons together. We're learning to communicate more openly and honestly, laying the foundation for a stronger, more resilient partnership. One of the biggest breakthroughs in therapy came when we decided to take control of the situation with the help of a lawyer. We've been working tirelessly to get the video taken down from various. It's been a tedious and frustrating process, but with each takedown, we reclaim a bit of our dignity and privacy. After months of therapy, we're finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We've both grown immensely individually and as a couple. While the scars of the past will always linger, they no longer define us were stronger, more resilient, and more deeply connected than ever before. Our journey is far from over, but I'm hopeful for the future. In one particularly intense session, my husband revealed a secret of his own, a past indiscretion he had buried deep within himself. It was a shocking revelation, one that shook the very foundation of our marriage. In that moment, I realized that our journey towards healing was far from over. Despite the initial shock and hurt, I chose to approach his confession with the same empathy and understanding he had shown me. We embarked on a new chapter of our relationship, one defined by honesty, forgiveness, and a renewed commitment to each other. Through open and vulnerable conversations, we confronted our past mistakes and insecurities head on. We leaned on each other for support, navigating the complexities of forgiveness and redemption together. As we continued our journey, we discovered a newfound sense of closeness and intimacy. Our relationship transformed into a safe haven where we could be our true selves, flaws and all. We learned to embrace our imperfections and celebrate the strength of our love. Today, I'm grateful for the unexpected twists and turns that led us to this place of profound growth and understanding. Our marriage is stronger than ever, fortified by the challenges we've overcome and the unwavering bond we share. While our journey towards healing may have been unconventional, it has ultimately brought us closer together, reaffirming our belief in the power of love, forgiveness, and second chances.